Rumors do not just whisper anymore, they roar across social media feeds like a storm at midnight. This time, the name caught in the lightning is Bishop T.D. Jakes. America's most influential pastor, the man millions call a spiritual father, stands at the center of an unfolding mystery. For weeks, scattered reports hinted at an unseen struggle. Now, his own family has stepped forward, and the fragments of their words are sparking more questions than answers. Could Bishop Jakes be facing a private battle that might change everything we know about him and the empire he has built? The internet is on fire with speculation, and what insiders are starting to reveal is shaking even the most faithful hearts. When you talk about Bishop T.D. Jakes, you are not talking about an ordinary preacher. You are talking about a global force whose sermons ripple across continents. Best-selling books, record-shattering conferences, television and film ventures, his influence reaches from church pews to Hollywood studios. He is a figure whose every word is amplified, dissected, and debated. Yet beneath the spotlight, shadows are gathering. This is not just a story about illness. It is a story about power, legacy, and the terrifying question of what happens when the leader at the center of it all is suddenly vulnerable. Online forums are already exploding with emotional posts. "If something happens to Bishop Jakes, what happens to us?" one follower tweeted. "The Potter's house will never be the same," another wrote on Facebook. The digital congregation is holding its breath. To understand why these whispers cut so deep, you have to rewind the clock to the very beginning. Thomas Dexter Jakes was born on June 9, 1957, in South Charleston, West Virginia. He grew up the youngest of three in a working-class family. His father ran a janitorial business, his mother was an educator. They were not rich. Life tested them early, especially when his father was struck by kidney disease. Imagine being a boy, watching illness chip away at the man you admire most. Those long nights of quiet worry carved a compassion into T.D. Jakes' soul that no sermon could fully explain. Friends say that pain built the foundation of the preacher he would become. Yet even then, destiny seemed to mock him. A childhood lisp made people doubt he could ever stand on a stage. Many told him he would never preach. But he refused to break. And now, decades later, destiny seems to be testing him again. The very topic of health, so familiar, so haunting from his youth, is back, only this time he is the one under the microscope. Concern began as soft murmurs inside church corridors. Then came subtle signs, postponed appearances, rare moments when his usually thunderous energy seemed muted. Followers on TikTok and Instagram started compiling clips, whispering in comment threads. "Does he look tired to you?" one viral video asked. The pattern was impossible to ignore. When his family finally addressed the issue, instead of calming fears, their careful words deepened the mystery. They acknowledged private health matters, but stopped short of giving details. The internet read between every line, sensing secrets where the family offered silence. What makes this more than a simple health update is the high-stakes future tied to Bishop Jakes' name. The Potter's House is not just a church. It is a global movement, a financial powerhouse, and a spiritual lifeline for millions. Who leads when the unshakable leader shakes? Inside sources claim contingency plans are quietly being drafted. Some describe urgent late-night meetings among senior pastors. Others hint at tensions, ambitious voices already positioning for power. One former staff member wrote anonymously on Reddit, "You would not believe the backroom conversations happening right now. Everyone is smiling on stage, but behind closed doors, it is another story." Betrayal, ambition, and faith collide in a way that feels ripped from a Netflix drama. As we dig deeper, a chilling timeline emerges. Over the years, Bishop Jakes has faced scattered health scares, each followed by strong comebacks. But this time feels different. Family statements remain guarded. Medical details are locked away. Even his most trusted circle speaks in riddles. The effect is electric. Every sermon is now watched like a clue. Every absence becomes breaking news. The faithful are praying, but many are bracing. Social media is a live wire of heartbreak and conspiracy. Twitter threads speculate about everything from secret surgeries to hidden succession battles. TikTok reels loop moments when his voice trembled. You can almost feel the collective heartbeat of millions waiting for the next revelation. This is bigger than one man. It is about how an entire generation of believers faces the fragility of their heroes. Will the Potter's house stand unshaken if its cornerstone falters? Will unity hold when ambition calls? Or will hidden rivalries erupt in full public view? These questions are not going away, because this story is still unfolding in real time. And if history teaches anything, it is that the most dramatic turns come when everyone least expects them. So stay with me. Because the deeper I dig, the clearer it becomes. What is happening behind those closed doors is far more explosive than anyone dares to say out loud. When the final pieces fall into place, the world may not only be shocked, they may never look at Bishop T.D. Jakes, or the empire he created, the same way again. But where others saw limits, he saw destiny. Long before the headlines, long before the megachurch crowds, a young Thomas Dexter Jakes felt a burning pull toward ministry. By his early 20s, he was already preaching in tiny storefront churches with barely a dozen folding chairs. In 1982, he planted the Greater Emmanuel Temple of Faith in Montgomery, West Virginia. There were no bright lights, no television cameras, no choir shaking the rafters, only 10 faithful souls and a preacher whose voice cracked with both urgency and belief. That small beginning felt ordinary at first, but behind it, history was quietly setting the stage. Then came the turn that would rewrite his life. Through the late 1980s and early 1990s, the fire in his sermons began to spread. He spoke like someone who had walked through storms and survived. His words did not merely inform, they pierced. People who heard him wept in the pews and carried his phrases into their own battles. Unlike the smooth, camera-ready televangelists who dominated the era, Jakes brought raw truth that felt lived in and undeniable. By the mid-1990s, his reach could no longer be contained. In 1996 he planted the Potter's House in Dallas, Texas, and what followed was less like growth and more like detonation. Within a handful of years, membership surged into the tens of thousands, and today more than 30,000 people call that church home while millions stream in from every corner of the globe. Yet his ambitions refused to stop at the pulpit. Bishop Jakes wrote best-selling books that spoke directly to wounded hearts. Woman, thou art loosed. And emotions became lifelines for readers fighting for identity, healing, and faith. He built conferences so massive that stadiums struggled to hold the crowds. He crossed into Hollywood, producing films and media events that made faith feel cinematic. His voice carried weight far beyond Sunday mornings, influencing conversations about race, politics, and culture itself. For an entire generation, he became more than a pastor, he became a cultural architect and a father figure. And that is precisely why every new rumor about his health sends tremors across communities. Followers cannot imagine a world where his voice falls silent. But here is where the narrative darkens. While his public success blazed like a comet, quiet questions about his health have shadowed him for years. Long before trending hashtags and viral reels, careful observers noticed subtle signs. During the early 2000s, when his conferences sold out arenas and his books dominated bestseller lists, some churchgoers began whispering. They had seen moments when he seemed uncharacteristically tired, when his powerful cadence softened into labored breaths. At first it looked like simple fatigue. Who would not be exhausted after preaching multiple services each week, traveling nonstop, and steering a media empire? Yet the murmurs kept growing. Then came unexplained breaks from the pulpit, short, sudden absences that the church never fully explained. Each time, the congregation filled in the blanks with its own theories. Early blogs speculated about hidden illnesses. Forum posts dissected every public photo. The question that echoed again and again, was this only the cost of relentless work, or was something deeper unfolding? Those early speculations never fully disappeared. Instead, they lingered in the background like a low drumbeat, ready to rise at the first hint of trouble. Fast forward to the present and that drumbeat is now thunder. In the age of TikTok timelines and Twitter storms, even the smallest sign becomes magnified. A single slowed step or a brief disappearance from live streams sparks instant wildfire. Screenshots are shared. Threads explode. Look at his eyes, do you notice it? One viral post demanded. Fans flood the comments with prayer emojis, but beneath the devotion lies fear. Meanwhile, his family's careful words, acknowledging only private health matters, have done nothing to quiet the storm. If anything, they have deepened the mystery. What emerges is a portrait of a man who built a global ministry from 10 folding chairs, who defied every early limitation, but who now finds himself facing the one challenge that no charisma or business strategy can outmaneuver. And as the whispers grow louder, the question tearing through the digital congregation is not only what is happening but what happens next. For millions who have built their faith journeys around Bishop T.D. Jakes' presence, the thought of his voice fading is more than news. It is unthinkable. Yet the signs, and the silence, suggest that the next chapter of this story may be the most dramatic, and the most revealing, one yet. As the years passed, speculation did not fade, it evolved. Some church insiders whispered about high blood pressure. Others pointed to diabetes. A few dared to suggest heart problems, ailments that often shadow leaders who carry enormous weight on their shoulders, especially within the Black church community where expectations can be relentless. The theories multiplied because Bishop T.D. Jakes himself never played the game of public confessions. Unlike pastors who turn their medical stories into sermon illustrations, he drew a careful curtain around his private battles. And in an age when every public figure's life feels like open data, that silence only sharpened the public's hunger for answers. The less he said, the wilder the guessing became. By the mid-2000s, the whispers flared again. During one of his widely televised sermons, viewers could not help noticing that he appeared noticeably leaner. What should have been an encouraging sign set off a digital storm. Was this a disciplined journey toward better health, or was it the visible echo of something far more serious? Twitter lit up with prayers, while Facebook comment threads split between congratulations and uneasy concern. For every fan writing, "Glory to God for Bishop's transformation," another posted, "This sudden change is worrying, pray hard." The debate swirled for days. Through it all, Bishop Jakes never flinched. He preached with the same thunder, wrote bestsellers, launched film projects, and unveiled fresh initiatives. His relentless work ethic became legend and paradox. How could one man sustain such a punishing pace without consequences? Then came the turning point that would redefine those whispers. A few years ago, quiet but persistent reports surfaced that Bishop Jakes had faced a sudden medical emergency, serious enough to make him pause, however briefly. It was never officially confirmed, but people close to him dropped hints that it served as a wake-up call. Around that same time, subtle changes began to ripple through the Potter's house. His family, once mostly in the background, started taking on higher-profile roles. They preached more often. They hosted major conferences. For many longtime members, it felt like the beginning of an unspoken transition, a quiet preparation for a day when their beloved bishop might not carry the entire load himself. But instead of silencing speculation, the family's carefully chosen words poured gasoline on the fire. Followers listened with an almost forensic attention to every phrase, every pause. Sarah Jakes Roberts, his dynamic daughter who leads One Church LA and commands global women's conferences, spoke in a recent interview with heartfelt devotion. "We are always covering my father in prayer, and we are mindful of the weight he carries. As a family, we make sure he is surrounded by love and support." On the surface, a tender reassurance. But millions heard something else in the undertone. Why highlight the weight he carries unless there was real worry about how that weight was affecting his body? Cora Jakes, another daughter and minister in her own right, added more layers. During a live stream, she told viewers, "Dad is strong, but even strong people need rest. We are making sure he takes care of himself because we want him around for a long time." Her voice was calm, but the implication felt heavy. Social media immediately seized on the phrase "even strong people need rest," spinning it into everything from hidden heart issues to secret hospital stays. Screenshots of the moment went viral. Fans prayed openly. Critics dissected every word. Even Sarita Jakes, Bishop Jakes's wife of more than 4 decades, joined the delicate chorus. She described her husband as a man who pours out constantly, but she also underscored the necessity of balance, rest, and health. Her gentle insistence, that pouring out without replenishment carries a cost, struck listeners as both loving and ominous. Instead of closing the subject, each statement widened the mystery. To many, it sounded less like reassurance and more like coded confirmation that something significant was happening behind closed doors. And that is the paradox that now fuels this unfolding drama. By choosing empathy over explanation, the Jakes family has kept control of the narrative while igniting endless interpretation. Their language, carefully respectful, unwavering in its call for prayer, acknowledges a reality without naming it. Every sentence feels like a puzzle piece that almost fits but never clicks into place. In a world hungry for clarity, the silence becomes a message of its own. For the millions who draw daily strength from Bishop T.D. Jakes, these careful phrases are enough to keep hope alive, but also enough to keep suspicion burning. Each Sunday sermon, each public appearance, is now watched frame by frame like a true crime investigation. People are not merely listening to his words, they are studying his breathing, his posture, the pause between 2 sentences, desperate to glimpse the truth the family has chosen to protect. What began as casual concern has transformed into a global guessing game, one where faith, fear, and intrigue collide, and where the next revelation could shake the Potter's house to its very foundation. And in today's hyper-connected world, interpretation transforms into speculation in the blink of an eye. Inside the Potter's house, small shifts have begun to feel like seismic signals. Trusted leaders, most notably Sarah Jakes Roberts, are stepping into brighter spotlights, leading major conferences and carrying key moments of worship. Observers have noticed Bishop Jakes sometimes stepping back, letting others close the service or deliver crucial messages. What might look like routine delegation has, for longtime members, taken on the weight of prophecy, a quiet but unmistakable sign that a new chapter may be nearer than anyone dares to admit. Yet the family walks a razor-thin line. They have every right to protect the private details of their father's health. But when someone shepherds more than 30,000 souls locally and influences millions more around the globe, the private and public cannot stay neatly separated. For followers who see Bishop Jakes not merely as a preacher but as a spiritual father and a cultural figure, each half-revealed sentence from the family carries the tension of both comfort and alarm. One moment it sounds like reassurance, the next, it feels like coded preparation for something bigger. This is where the story deepens. While the family repeatedly asks for prayers and rest, critics are asking a harder question: has the transition already begun? Is the Potter's House, and the massive TD Jakes brand that reaches into books, film, and global conferences, quietly moving to secure the future without its founding leader at the helm? If so, what will that mean for millions who depend on his voice to navigate life's most difficult decisions? The latest ripple of health rumors made that question impossible to avoid. Within hours, the conversation raced across social media and spilled into churches worldwide. We are not talking about any pastor. This is a man whose messages reach millions every week, whose conferences fill sports arenas, and whose influence touches politics, entertainment, and culture. Reactions have been as emotional as they are divided. Inside the Dallas sanctuary that birthed his global platform, members describe an atmosphere thick with prayer and a quiet, unspoken fear. One longtime congregant posted on Facebook, "Bishop Jakes has carried us through our hardest seasons. The thought of him not being there every Sunday is hard to process, but we also know he is human and we want him to take care of himself." That mixture of fierce love and worried acceptance captures the mood of thousands. Beyond Dallas, pastors of other megachurches have stepped forward to call for unity and prayer, praising Bishop Jakes for decades of selfless leadership and insisting he deserves to guard his health and peace. Some have used his situation to highlight a bigger issue: the punishing demands of ministry on high-profile leaders who are rarely given space to rest without guilt. Their public appeals sound both compassionate and cautionary, warning that burnout has become an epidemic hidden behind the bright lights of success. But not everyone is gentle. Detractors, including some from within the broader Christian world, have seized the moment to question succession plans, transparency, and accountability. They argue that megachurches often revolve so tightly around one towering personality that they risk implosion when that person steps back. One commentator put it starkly on YouTube: "What happens to the Potter's House when Bishop Jakes can no longer lead? Is there a clear plan, or will the church struggle to find its footing?" The question may sound harsh, but even supporters admit it cannot be ignored. Meanwhile, media outlets and social platforms have turned every public moment into evidence. Each sermon clip is slowed down, each family comment dissected. The conversation spikes every time a fresh rumor lands on Twitter or a new TikTok clip surfaces. Supporters flood timelines with prayer chains and hopeful words. Skeptics flood the same threads with doubts, asking why details remain so tightly sealed. The lack of specifics has become its own kind of revelation, a silence so deliberate that it feels like a message.